Stay connected to the world around you. KPBS brings you trusted news, compelling stories, and in-depth reporting every day. Wherever life takes you, KPBS is here, on the radio, online, and on the go. Discover more at kpbs.org.
It's time for KPBS Midday Edition. On today's show, we'll hear from the authors behind this year's One Book, One San Diego selections. I'm Jade Hindman with conversations that keep you informed, inspired, and make you think. I'll talk with the adult selection author James McBride about his book, Deacon King Kong. Then the teen selection author Tin Pham about family style, memories of an American from Vietnam. Plus, Olivia Abtahi talks about her kids selection book, The Interpreter. That's ahead on Midday Edition. You know, every year KPBS partners with libraries and other public institutions to bring you One Book, One San Diego. It's a time for San Diegans to share their love for reading by diving into the same book. There's a selection for adults, teens, and kids, and this year the teen selection is a graphic memoir. It follows a Vietnamese immigrant boy's search for belonging in America. And it is called Family Style, Memories of an American from Vietnam. Author-illustrator Tin Pham joins me now. Tin, welcome and congratulations to you.
Oh my God, thank you so much. This is so great because I've always kind of thought of San Diego as my second home. I'm really excited about it. I've been coming, going to San Diego Comic Con every summer since 2000s.
Yeah.
And my friends live in San Diego, so I really love San Diego. And this is such an honor, and it's so awesome that it's in San Diego.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like you got some good history here.
Yeah.
Well, okay, can't wait to dive into your book.
Yeah.
Because this book really, it started with a conversation that you had with your mom back in 2020.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So, it was really interesting because a lot of immigrant families, and whenever I do talks, and I say this, a lot of Vietnamese immigrant people, if they're in the audience, they'll come up and tell me that it really relates to them because for us Vietnamese immigrants, our family always kept us from like trauma. They were always trying to protect their kids from anything that's bad. My parents has never told me anything like bad in our family. And so my parents never told me the full story of how we immigrated here from Vietnam. I mean, I would hear bits and pieces and stuff like that, but nothing, fully detailed. And I'm 48, so I've been
Mm-hmm.
around, so I hadn't heard anything. And I've always wanted to tell this story because, like my friend Jean Yang, I once told my friend Jean Yang about kind of like how we came over to America. And my friend Jean Yang was basically like, you have to tell this story because it's the only thing interesting about you. And so I was like, well, I guess I got to tell it. But I never was able to do it. And I never really understood why until 2020, it was the pandemic. Basically, I went and visited my parents a lot because I was worried about them. And it was one of those things where you don't get to see people a lot. So you can visit your family and you can just sit outside in the backyard or the front yard and eat
Mm-hmm.
pho and talk. And I quickly realized that we were running out of things to talk about. So I decided that I was going to finally ask my mom. And so I asked my mom, like, the story. So she told me, but I wasn't really expecting how moved I would be.
Mm-hmm.
She told me this story. I think it maybe is my age. I'm starting to really think about things and life and stuff. And as she's telling me the story, I just felt so moved of the sacrifices and the hardships that my family went through just to give their kids a better life. And I take my family, my parents for granted quite a bit. And when I heard this, I was just so like I just felt so like appreciative of their everything, and I was just like I can't believe I was just complaining about having to like refix their Wi-Fi, and here they're telling me this story, this harrowing story of like everything they did to get us to have a better life. And so I went home and I was like, okay, I have to tell this story now. And so I just started to write.
Yeah.
And the weird thing was, even though I knew this my from the story from my mom, I didn't quite understand how to like approach the story until we had more of a conversation and my mom asked me what I remembered from my trip.
Well, let me ask you about that
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
I mean, how does telling this story through a child's eyes um, resonate with teen readers? Why did you go that route with this?
Yeah, when I started writing this, I didn't really have an age group in mind. I was just, writing my parents' story, and when she asked me what I remembered, I told her, I started telling her the things I remembered about our early days in America. And I realized quickly that all my memories were were from food. Like I had all these memories, and every memory would start with, "Oh, I remember we ate this rice ball. I
Mhm.
remember we had this thing," and that's when I realized that was like my approach to this project was I was going to be able to tell the story through memories of food. And I've already been kind of into, like, for a long time now, I've been drawing a lot of comics about food. I do a comic strip food review every week with my
Hmm.
friend Luke here at KQED, which is the public radio station we have here in San Francisco. So I've been working with KQED to do this food strip for a long time. And so it just perfectly matched. It's like, yeah, I'm going to tell it through my memories of food. And so as soon as that happened, I was able to just like really concentrate on writing this book. And the book became more like our story rather than just my parents' story.
Yeah, that's cool. And talk to me about, the graphic memoir format. I mean, what advantages does it allow you as a storyteller?
Oh, I mean, it's really great. This is my very first graphic memoir, and one of the greatest things about the graphic memoir is it allow like you remember your story, and if you don't remember your story, you have people that can reference it for you. The neat thing about everybody's life is like I for a little while I thought there had already been a couple of Vietnamese diaspora memoirs already and graphic novels, and they're really good. So for a while, I thought, do we need another one? And what I have what I have come to realize after writing this book and going around and talking to other people that have read this book, that yeah, we need all these stories because it's like I just didn't think that my life was anything that anyone wanted to read about. But in telling your story, it's amazing to see how many people can relate to your story. I have so many Vietnamese immigrants that you were either born here. There's a lot of second generation, third generation Vietnamese immigrant that tells me that their parents or their grandparents have the same story and how this is that they really relate to it. I have people that aren't even Vietnamese, just immigrants from the Philippines or and other countries that also relate to it. And then there's just people that just relate to it because of the food aspect or like certain aspects of being an immigrant. So it was really neat to see how my story is very similar to many people's story, but the difference is what makes each one of them so interesting. Like someone will tell me, "Oh, my parents did went through the same thing, but their story is this, this, and this," and
Hmm.
it just makes me like, "Oh, wow, that's so super interesting."
And what a blessing it is that you were able to hear about your story from your mother,
Yes.
and have that story to pass down. That's amazing. This idea of the American dream is a really present theme throughout your book. How do you define the American dream, and has that changed at all?
The American dream changed all the time. For us, for my parents and I, when we used to think, like as immigrants, you want that house, that you want to be rich, you want your kids to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and stuff like that. Um, and of course that changes. Like not all of that is easy. Not all of that is you find out is actually what you want. My parents were basically they came with one thing is that they were going to work hard so their kids can have a better life. And I think they quickly realized that they can work as hard as you want, but and they can provide for their kids, but their kids had like minds of their own. So like it was really hard, like telling my parents that I wanted to be an artist, and I didn't want to get one of these jobs that they was like hoping that I would get to set me for life. Um, so uh, so for the American dream for me, it was different, right? I instead of trying to make a lot of money and have solid foundation in life, I really wanted to just do art. I wanted to express myself. And so since my American dream changed, their idea of what the American dream did changed as well, and as for a while they worried a lot about me and us because it wasn't exactly how they had pictured it. But now that they see how happy or what their kids are. they I think they're way more flexible now. I think the American dream has changed quite a bit. I mean, I feel like my life now is living the American dream. I feel like we came here, my family came here with nothing, and we didn't know the language. We didn't know anything, and we worked basically, or just worked hard to have good lives and to give back to this country that has adopted us, and to be a person that gives back and is integral part of this community. And I think I've done that. And I think I seek to constantly do that. And I think that's my American dream now, is to be part of something bigger. And that's what I look for.
That's great. This book is the teen selection for One Book, One San Diego, but really anyone can enjoy it.
Yes.
What do you hope readers of all ages take away from the book?
I'm so happy that you said that, because when people ask me, that's kind of what I like to say. I think not only adults and teens will enjoy it, but I think little kids will enjoy it too. I've spoken to schools everywhere from like elementary schools all the way to middle schools and high schools and even adults. And I think depending on what age you read it, you just get more out of it. Young kids, they like the story, but they might not grasp some of the nuances as a high school kid might grasp, and they might not grasp some of the themes that an adult reader might understand. And I was hoping that this book was one of those books that would just grow with people as they read it. The two takeaways that I really wanted to come across, and it's not the thing that I started off telling. I started off just telling the story about immigrants, but now I see it as a book about all of us, and about struggling to make it, and to being happy. And then I think with the immigrant part, I really wanted, one of the main things is I wanted to show the world how important immigrants are to this country, and how hard it is for them to work to become an integral part of this community. And it isn't something that you just fall into. It's something that you really, really have to work hard for. And I just really wish that everybody, when they read this, can see their family in this. I hope that more people, when they read this, look at their parents or the generation before them or before them, and see the sacrifices that every generation, and the work that every generation does for the next generation.
Hmm. Well, speaking of, the next generation, I mean, I'm curious. Do you have any concern that for people who may be seeking the American dream, is it still attainable, or is it more difficult to attain now, you think?
I am a teacher now, and I have students that are immigrants as well. And I find that the American dream, it seems like it's something that is more widely available. I think that when we were growing up, what we wanted to do was very limited. You know, you were the idea of what you're going to be when you grow up was very limited. And now, as I teach, I realize that when my students graduate high school and go to college and they get a job, their jobs are jobs that I don't even know about yet. You know, like I don't think that they are going to, there are jobs that they're going to be doing that has not even been invented at this moment. And I like that. The world moving way faster, and I feel like there's finally a place for everybody. You know, I feel like if you want to be an artist, like when I was growing up, they would say, if you want to be an artist, there's no way you're gonna starve. But now, if you want to be an artist, there's a place for you out there. You know, you can still be an artist and make money and survive. I feel like that world has been open to everybody. So I have like all the hope in the world that the kids of today, because how much the world has opened up, will have a better chance at achieving their dreams than we did.
I've been speaking with Tin Pham, author and illustrator of Family Style Memories of an American from Vietnam. It's this year's teen selection for One Book, One San Diego. Tin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, James McBride, author of the One Book, One San Diego adult selection, Deacon King Kong, joins us. KPBS Midday Edition is back after the break. Welcome back to KPBS Midday Edition. I'm Jade Hindman. To continue our celebration of International Literacy Day and One Book, One San Diego, James McBride is joining us. He's the author of this year's adult selection, Deacon King Kong, and he's really just a literary giant. Last year, McBride was awarded the Library of Congress's Prize for American Fiction. Aside from Deacon King Kong, some of his other works include The Color of Water, The Good Lord Bird, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, and much more. James joins me live now. Congratulations on the selection and welcome to Midday Edition.
Well, as they say in public radio, thank you for having me.
That is the thing they say, right? It's what we
Yeah, that's
say.
what they tell you to say.
Yeah.
Say thank you for having me. All right, there it is.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here. Okay, so some readers, they may not know this about you, but you actually left a career in journalism to become a full-time musician. Talk to me about that pivot.
Well, I just got, the nature of journalism is to find out what's wrong. And the nature of good storytelling that people want to read to the end, is to find out what's right and what works, And so journalism for me was not creative enough. I just felt limited. And, I grew up as a musician. I, went to school for music. I loved play. So I quit. I was at the Washington Post and quit and moved to New York, moved back to New York and just started to play.
Wow.
And, so those were happy years, actually. I was broke, but I was very happy. You got to do what you like to do in this life, because it's a very short run.
That it
So,
is, yeah. Well, tell me, I mean, your first book, The Color of Water, was a memoir. How did you eventually land on fiction?
well, I mean, the color of water was one of those things where, you become the mixed race guy. Like, all about mixed race and anybody who's mixed and blah, blah, blah. I just find that to be pretty, for me personally, a little bit boring. Having grown up as a so-called mixed race person in Black America. I mean, if you can show me one Black American who's not mixed, I'll give you $100 right now. I just didn't. I just was like, I've outgrown that, you know, and so fiction was a place for me to really, you know, a place where you could really make dreams come true, and you know, you could help things happen that you dream about and that have happened and present them in ways that allow people to see how we learn to get along and how we are quite much a lot the same. So, and it's just more creative. I mean, nonfiction is you're limited by the facts, and sometimes those facts are someone else's facts,
Mm.
and you know, so then you get into like explaining why someone else's facts are not really facts. And by the time you finish, 10 pages have passed, and the reader puts the book down and turns on the television. So,
Sure, or starts to scroll. Um, really, I guess what you do gives you an opportunity to reimagine what this world can be and who people can be. You once said in an interview, fiction allows your dreams to come true. In what ways has fiction made your dreams, both in the world of your novels and in real life, come true?
oh, I don't know. I mean, you know, it allows you to be. I mean, you know, I'm working on a new book now, so I'm lost in that, and I don't feel like my dreams are coming true right now. I'm just going through the usual torture of book writing, but I mean, you know, it's provided me with a wonderful living, and I just got lucky. I mean, you know, you know, with fiction, you don't have to work with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
If you're screenwriting, you write it, you got to, you know, you write for the production company. The production company says a little to the left, a little to the right, and then they stick the script in the drawer anyway because they want to keep their job. And then if you're in a band, or if you run a band, you say, look, I just want 4 bars of this, and they do something else because they're hearing something. You have to, you know, you have to constantly coax others into your dream life.
Mm-hmm.
But with fiction, you know, you don't actually move the characters around. They kind of move you around, but you at least set them on the page, and you can turn them loose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, you just
You
you're right because it chooses you, and fiction just chooses you,
yeah.
not the other way.
And when you write there, you don't have to make any compromises, which is a great thing. So let me get into your book, Deacon King Kong, here, because it's set in September 1969. Talk about the significance of that year and how New York changed during that time.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. I mean, I was just, you know, I was 12 years old, but I suppose, you know, it was a different city. I mean, it just was, you know, there were no cell phones. It was, you know, you had to talk to your neighbors. You had to really get along. You couldn't order from whatever it is people order from. I don't know. They have some, you know, you can just call somebody and they bring bread to your house or whatever. You know, it was just one of those. It was a situation where people had to actually talk to one another, and you know, it was a lot grittier. I won't say it was more dangerous. It was just more interesting, in my opinion. Now, you know, I don't want to get into the good old days. Everyone's good old days are worthwhile. But it was just a more interesting place because the dynamics of technology required that you stand at the bus stop and wait for the bus. And you know, and that I mean, you can do that now, but then you can check your watch and you can look at your cell phone. You don't have to look at people. You don't have to you can just float through as a lonely soul without ever paying attention to someone. You know, New York is like an empty dis. New York is like a disco now, where just millions of people are dancing, being lonely together. In
Hmm.
the old days, you know, you had to really communicate with other people because you were forced to just get around and go to the store and go to the park, and you had to get out.
Right.
Now, that's not to say it's worse now than it was then. It was just different.
Yeah. And by different, there was human interaction, a lot more of it back then. That's such an interesting take. So the book follows Sport Coat, who is described as a cranky old deacon from a small Baptist church. One day he pulls out a .38 and shoots a drug dealer in front of everyone. It really causes a chain reaction rather in the community. So, talk about the portrait you've painted of this community and how all their different worlds come together.
Well, you asked some pretty tough questions. I mean, you ought to be a painter. I mean, I can't. Well, essentially, this character's talking. This character is the reader is visiting a world that I experienced as a child, and also that lives in every community in the country, and that, or at least lived in every community in the country, and that everybody's different. And so you get to know the eccentric characters in your neighborhood, and the guy who works on his car all the time, and his aunt who takes out her teeth at Christmas, and all that other stuff. So the portrait of this community is usually the pretty stereotypical one, where people are shooting each other and stealing from each other, and da 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 da, and the cities are going to hell, and all that other stupid stuff. And that's not really true, not even now. It's just a place of dynamics, and those dynamics, in my opinion, as a just as a human being, but also as a creative person, are pretty interesting. So, because I like people,
Hmm.
of all types, and so I try to give people a lot of space because they deserve it, just like I deserve my own. So I don't know. I just tried to portray this community that is usually seen from behind the wheel of a locked car as the kind of place there where there's a lot of love, a lot of funny stuff happens, a lot of interesting stuff, and a lot of it's just based on humanity and nothing else.
Hmm. And all of this takes place in a housing project in Brooklyn, similar to the one you grew up in. How did you draw on your upbringing for this story?
Well, I know a lot about the church. My parents started a church in Brooklyn, a little tiny church, and I'm still part of that church. And so, I knew a lot about, you know, I knew a lot about a lot. I know a lot about the community because I participated and still participate in it. So that part wasn't, you know, hard to draw on. I mean, if you're a writer, you better be around somebody.
Hmm.
You can't just sit on a beach in Maui and write books. I suppose you can, but I just can't do it myself. But I know people can do it. I mean, Elmore Leonard wrote great books, and he wrote books about all kinds of stuff. And he
Yeah,
said he just read magazines, but I'm just not that smart. So, I just did it. Everybody sings the song the best way they know how to sing it, with whatever music they have. So for me, presenting this community was, and some of it was very joyous because I love some of the characters in the book,
sure.
um, and I've you learn to forgive your tribe more than someone else's tribe, but the truth is your tribe's no better than anybody else's.
Hmm.
And if you approach a story like that, then you learn to get the best out of everything. There was a writer in New York named Pete Hamill. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he was a wonderful writer. He was an Irish American cat. And I used to talk to him. I knew him, until he died. I mean, I would talk to him about writing and about New York. And Pete was the kind of guy who really understood that people are just trying to do their best.
Hmm.
And he saw a lot of bad stuff. I mean, he was a journalist for a long time. He was a very gifted journalist, but he always understood that people are trying to do their best, and that made him, in my opinion, a great, I don't know, I'd say a role model, a person to think about in terms of these characters, and in this particular situation, because Pete grew up not too far from where my housing project is. He grew up in the Gowanus area, which was in those days mostly working class, Irish, Latino, etc., black, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
It's kind of, and so that's, I don't know if I'm just rambling now. I mean,
Well, hey,
got to
you
stop. on
Listen,
that.
you draw off of these relationships and even just passing conversations that you have with people when you're bringing your creativity to the pages of a book. And speaking of which, I know you've sort of had your mind in the pages of your next book, but it's been 5 years since Deacon King Kong came out. How are you looking back on this story now in 2025?
Well, part of you is like Willie Nelson, who said, if they ask me to sing to all the girls I've loved before one more time, I'm going to throw myself out the window, or something to that effect. So, I'm still active in my community that is reflected in that book, some 40 years ago, and the community has changed quite a bit, and the problems that exist in the community now, some of them are the same problems that existed before, and some of them are not. I mean, in 1969, in the housing projects in Brooklyn, there were a lot more families with fathers who worked, who had jobs, And here in this year, fathers are a rarity because so many of them are either sick or in jail. And, just the health problems
Hmm.
of the community now are far more significant than they ever were when I was a child. And the food supply, all that
Hmm.
stuff. It's just,
Yeah,
it's really more complicated and requires a lot more time and a lot more
yeah.
thought. But the compassion and love is the same. The population has changed somewhat. A lot more Chinese now in the projects, at least in my housing project.
Well,
Um, but they too suffer. The poor suffer in this country. I
hmm.
mean, I was very interested to hear um, the young man who was talking before you. He sounds like a very talented writer, but I disagree with his last comments about opportunity for immigrant. I don't
Hmm.
believe that's happening. But he's a young guy, and we need his voice. But I see a little different take about in terms of how we treat the poor and working poor in this country.
Yeah.
So in some ways, Deacon King Kong, as twisted and screwed up and as funny and as humorous as the community was, there is a lot of that still. There is still good cops who are really funny and who really do their best, and there are really good churches and good people in church who really try hard, and they don't use religion like a baseball bat. There's all that, but there's also this giant militaristic hovering over you with the cameras and these just the whole mentality of we're not watching out for you, we're watching over you, and that didn't exist in 1969.
Well, I know you're going to be bringing this book, Deacon King Kong, to San Diego. So briefly, as we wrap up, what do you hope readers in our region take away from it?
Well, I hope they buy the hardcover so I can get a new car. That's what I hope. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, be joy, love somebody, be courageous and make change right where you are. I mean, the character in this book, he makes changes right where he is,
Hmm.
and so you make change right where you are. Take a stand. Stop being
Yeah.
afraid. What's to be afraid about?
All
No
right.
gun is going to protect you in this world. Just, put
Thank
God in your lap and roll.
That is a good message. I've been speaking with James McBride, author of the 2025 One Book, One San Diego Adult Selection, Deacon King Kong. James, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much, and congratulations again.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Still to come, Olivia Abtahi talks about her kid selection book, The Interpreter.
I like writing books about the things that we don't talk about, the things that a lot of children just assume is normal.
KPBS Midday Edition is back after the break. Welcome back to KPBS Midday Edition. I'm Jade Hindman. This hour, we're talking with the wonderful authors of One Book, One San Diego, the annual literary program where San Diegans enjoy the same book, Next up is the children's category. This year's selection is called The Interpreter. The book follows a young soccer player who's an interpreter for her Spanish-speaking parents. It's available in both English and Spanish, and joining me to talk about it is Olivia Abtahi. Olivia, welcome to Midday Edition.
Thanks so much for having me.
So glad to have you here. So, your book follows the story of Cecilia. She has two jobs, one on the soccer field and one at home as a translator. Tell me about her.
Yeah, Cecilia is like a lot of kiddos here in the United States. She has parents who speak mostly Spanish. So she kind of has this secret second job where she is interpreting all of her English world into Spanish for her parents.
Well, I'd love to have you read a couple of lines for us to really get a sense of the story. Do you have something?
Yes. So I will be reading from what I like to call the montage scene in the picture book. And it's just a series of vignettes where Cecilia is translating just kind of everyday interactions for her parents. So I'll start right here at the grocery store where Cecilia's father asks, ¿De dónde son estos mangos? Where are the mangoes from? What'll it be, folks? ¿Qué quiere pedir? ¿En cuántos días llega? When will a package get there? And now we come across a family with another little interpreter, and they ask in Persian, "In kuchuluye shama chan saleshe?" And that mother's interpreter asks Cecilia, "How old is your little one?" Cecilia then relays that message to her mother and says, "Quieren saber la edad de la bebé." Now we see Cecilia, she's getting more and more tired. For service in Spanish, press 3. And Cecilia says, "Marque el tres." Lastly, ¿qué significa at your earliest convenience? And Cecilia, looking so exhausted, says, "Lo más pronto posible." So we've got all of these different moments. My favorite is when they say for service in Spanish, press 3, but they're saying it in English. And we've all been there and we
Yes.
have to say, "Mom, like press 3."
Well, that portion of your book, I mean, it really is the experience of a lot of children. An estimated 11 million children in the U.S. are interpreters or translators for their parents, and that's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. What made you want to write a story for these kids?
I selfishly wanted to write the story for myself. I grew up in a household where my father is Iranian and my mother is Argentinian. So we had languages just kind of flying all over the place. And it wasn't really until I became older that I realized, oh, like this was not a normal experience for every family. I had parents who did learn English in their home country. So they learned a very kind of anglicized form of English.
Hmm.
But when it came to just Americanisms and idioms, there were things that I remember translating. And at the time I felt shame about it. And we just didn't talk about it. And I wanted to I like writing books about the things that we don't talk about, the things that a lot of children just assume is normal, but turns out it's not everybody's experience. So I really just want to write this for myself. And then as it went on and on, I'm realizing that I'm not the only one. And it helped me feel less alone in writing this novel and seeing all of these other children have the same experience.
Yeah. Well, you tell this story with a lot of playfulness and humor. Cecilia takes her job very seriously. She wears an oversized green suit and tie. So, why was that playfulness really a priority for you?
I always want to talk about hard things with playfulness. A lot of times when children are going through difficult things or trauma or just something really tough, rarely will a child say, "Help, help, I'm being oppressed." "Help, help, this is too much." And I always think about that when I'm reading heavy picture books. And those are the kinds of books where my daughter will lose interest, where we'll be reading and it's like this is a drag. And they're important books. Don't get me wrong, they're important with a capital I. They're the kind of books that win awards, but are they the kinds of books that a child will want to read over and over again? So playfulness is super important to me because at the end of the day, this is for children. And I think when you add playfulness or lightness to difficult subjects, I'm not trying to make it more palatable, but I do want it to be something that is easier for children to process and see happening in their own lives as well.
So, I mean, in what other ways do you really strike that balance when it comes to covering some of those heavier and more difficult topics?
I really struggled with this manuscript, to be honest. It was really hard. The first versions were that kind of insipid heaviness that I mentioned, full of lessons and morals um, and I think what really helped me was actually, my background is in film and television. I went to NYU Film School. And when I finally just sat down and wrote this manuscript as a screenplay, where I could see what is happening on the page versus what is happening in the text, um, that helped me a lot in striking that balance and envisioning colorful characters saying these things. It's one thing to stare down the barrel of a Word document just in black and white, but it's another to imagine in your head, okay, like there's going to be pinks and purples and blues and greens on this page. How can we walk that fine line between an important message, but also just having a really appealing and lighthearted book?
Well, the wonderful illustrations in this book are done by Monica Arnaldo. How are colors and imagery really used to carry the story forward?
Monica is a complete genius. And I do want to add that she also grew up in the same kind of household as this book, where we were both little interpreters. And I think um, that adds so much. The montage scene that I just read out loud for you, that was all Monica. Much of that was not in my manuscript. And she wanted to add some experiences that she had had growing up as a Mexican Canadian. And Monica's colors and use of the page, the visual balance really comes to light with the speech bubbles. We have all of the speech bubbles in different colors according to the different language. So here in the manuscript, we've got all of the Spanish in a kind of orangey yellow and all of the English in blue. And so when we have moments where those two languages are intersecting, that creates green. So you've got this really gorgeous Venn diagram. And there's sections in Persian, those are in pink. When those join with the blue, that makes purple. And on top of that, taking from those colors, Monica has given Cecilia a green suit because she is speaking both the yellow Spanish and the blue English. And so what's wonderful about this suit as well, and once again, this just speaks to Monica's brilliance, is that in the beginning of the manuscript, Cecilia's wearing kind of an ill-fitting suit. It's a little big. She's trying to fill some shoes that are a bit too big for her. But as she gets more and more exhausted, this suit takes on a mind of its own. It gets longer, the tie gets longer, the collar becomes rumpled, it becomes wrinkly, and it is kind of this visual metaphor for Cecilia's exhaustion as this poor suit gets worn out. And later towards the end of the book, as Cecilia claims more agency, the suit becomes really snappy, well fitted, and Cecilia just looks really sharp.
Yeah, I love that. This book, it really does have to do with first generation kids having to take on these adult roles and the immense pressure they can feel. Talk to me about the emotional weight of that, as illustrated in the book.
Yeah. For a lot of first generation kids, this sense of obligation, duty, filial piety really weighs on us. We know that a lot of our parents came from situations that were really difficult in their home countries. And so having parents who brought us here with so much opportunity um, is kind of instilled in us. It's just this unspoken thing. And I think the suit also kind of shows that weight on Cecilia because we would never say like, no, I can't translate your coffee order. Like I'm burnt out. It's like, my parents have sacrificed everything to bring me here. We're so lucky we can even go to a coffee shop and have our customized order. Why would I not translate it for them? So I think once again, it's that balance of importance and playfulness, having to show visually how this duty and obligation can kind of like weigh children down was really important without making it too heavy.
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned, this book is the children's selection for San Diego's One Book, One San Diego. It'll be available in both English and Spanish. As readers bring this story home, what do you hope they take away from the book?
Well, it's so wonderful that, first of all, One Book, One San Diego picked this book because as an Iranian Argentinian, there is a huge Persian and Latina population in San Diego. So I'm hoping that kiddos who look like me as they're reading this book will see, hey, I'm not the only one. This is something that other children are experiencing too. First of all, there's no shame. This is very normal for a lot of families. And secondly, I hope that they just start the conversation of how it feels for them. Some kids may really enjoy this, but at the end of the day, translating is a full-time job, and some children might be really overwhelmed. So I hope that this book gives children courage to ask for help, number one, but to just even show this labor in the limelight. It's just so unspoken. It's just so assumed that, kids will help in this way. And I love that, so many children want to help their families. But I do just want to shed light on the fact that this is a full-time job that a lot of kiddos are doing in addition to their very real job of being a kid. And I hope that this book just starts conversations, and that if there's children who need help, that they know that it's okay to ask.
I've been speaking with Olivia Abtahi. She's the author of the picture book, The Interpreter. It's the children's selection for One Book, One San Diego. Olivia, it's such an important book. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Jade Hindman. Thanks for tuning in to Midday Edition. Be sure to have a great day on purpose, everyone.
Start your day with Morning Edition and wind it down with All Things Considered, only on KPBS. From global headlines to local stories, stay informed, inspired, and connected. Tune in daily or listen anytime at kpbs.org.